So I think we're going to get started today. And this is an unusual topic for us because metacognition is something that, hi Michelle, nice to see you. Metacognition is something that we don't talk that much about in the ADHD world, and it seems like it's so important that we do. Hi Mary from Montana. Hi Jay Lee. Hi Peter from Ottawa. And Lee, you might go by Lee, not Jay, so I wasn't sure, so I said both. Um, so we're going to talk today a little bit about metacognition, and then I really want to open up the comment section to the ways that you understand your own thinking and how you may struggle with that, and what kinds of things would be helpful for you in terms of promoting more self-awareness and helpful. Hi Mary, welcome. So good to have you. Hi Yvonne from Ontario, and hi Monica from the Bay Area. That is my second home, my heart home. Lived there for 10 years. Hi Lara from Indiana. Great to have you. So let's get started. So I thought I would start with telling you a little bit about what I know about metacognition. Okay, Lee, that's great. So what is metacognition? Metacognition is the awareness of your own thinking and your thought processes with the goal of improving your learning and your approach to things. Okay. Abby, rats also have metacognition. I'm not surprised. I think a lot of mammals have some level of metacognition, and particularly rats who are, often used in experiments. Hi, Nicole from Dallas. So, metacognition is the awareness and understanding of your own thinking and thought processes with the goal of improving learning or performance. Metacognition is related to self-awareness. I actually refer to it often as self-evaluation. It's considered a key executive functioning skill because it really governs behavioral output, and it's fundamentally tied to emotional control and self-regulation. So we also can think about metacognition as managing your own thinking. And it's the last executive functioning skill to fully coalesce around age 20 or 27 or 28 in people with ADHD. Along with self-regulation, metacognition helps you choose, monitor, and evaluate how you approach a task, how you are working on it, and the kind of accomplishment that you've achieved, whether or not you've reached your final goal. For example, if you're writing a report for work, or your child's writing a report for school, it increases the awareness of your progress, maybe the distractibility, and the need for more efficiency so you can make different choices. Yes, Susan, metacognition is thinking about your thinking, and it's also about thinking about your learning. Metacognitive processes are something that many of us just do naturally. So before we do something, we look ahead to what's in front of us. Like, do I have what I need to do to work on a task? During the task, you may notice your progress. How is my plan working? Am I making progress? Do I need to make any adjustments? And then after something's completed or you're finished, you can consider the process as well as the accomplishment. What did I do well? What could I have done differently? And so a lot of times when we're in the middle of problem solving or doing a project, we work through it, we finish it, and we move on to the next thing. We don't reflect on our options. And I'm going to give you an example. As I said, I'm in Boston today. I was at a conference earlier, and it was a complicated thing. I couldn't drive myself to Boston because I'm going somewhere else after this, that I won't be able to drive myself home from, actually to visit my parents in Philadelphia. And so I had to figure out how I was going to get to this conference. And I went through all kinds of things in my head. Like, I looked up a bus. And of course, there's no trains from Western Mass to Eastern Mass. Go figure it out. And then I thought about, well, could I take a Lyft or an Uber? And I priced that. It was really expensive. And then one of my daughter's high school friends is home. And so I said, hey, could I pay you to drive me to Boston? And that's how I got there. But once I was done that process of figuring that out, I didn't spend more time thinking about, I strategized, I thought laterally, blah, blah, blah. I just went on to the next problem. And I think that's what a lot of us do. And the benefit of paying attention to how we think about things, particularly if you have ADHD, is so that you can see how your brain works and give yourself credit when things work out for you. So there are a few questions and comments here. Lily says, do all ADHD teenagers or children have to be put on medication, or can you do it via therapy, like cognitive therapy? Putting a child on medication is a very personal decision. ADHD is a biologically based condition, and medication can help facilitate improved connections, neural connections in the brain. But pills don't teach skills, and you still have to learn skills to improve your executive functioning capacities. In general, the ideal treatment for ADHD is considered a combination of medication and parent training and or family therapy. Hi, Jovi. Hi, Yahara. Glad you're in Boston. Hi, David. Nice to see you. Okay, so there was another question, I think. No. Okay. So one thing that I want to say is that what I found was interesting in preparing for the talk today is that researchers at the University College of London found that people with better metacognitive skills have more gray matter in their anterior front right prefrontal cortex, right here. People with ADHD have some areas of the brain that are smaller. One of them is the anterior right prefrontal cortex, which would make sense about why a metacognition can be hard for so many people. So how do we improve metacognition? And I think this is really interesting because we want to improve self-evaluation, but we don't want to improve self-evaluation to the point where we're putting ourselves down for what we're noticing about ourselves. And so it's a really fine line. So we want to learn to ask, and we want to teach our kids to ask, how am I doing? What's helped me before that I could apply to this situation? What is the impact of my words or behaviors on others? What are their faces or their bodies showing me? So this is very helpful because we're trying to help kids learn the impact of what they're doing. That's part of metacognitive awareness, but also to think about their own thinking and what kind of learners they are. So it's very complex, which is why it is probably the last executive functioning skill to fully coalesce in the mid to late 20s for people with ADHD. So we want to teach our kids and ourselves to review our progress towards our goals, look at what happened with the outcomes, and then shift our efforts or redirect our efforts if necessary. So I have a few questions here, and I'd love you to think about and answer this question. When you think about how you think, when you reflect on your own thinking, what kinds of words would come into your brain? How would you describe your thinking? So let's see. Yvonne says, what kind of parent training or family therapy do you recommend? Which discipline is best to help with this? Cognitive behavioral therapy can be really useful, particularly it has to be in the family context because you as the parents will need to sort of follow up and sustain whatever the interventions are. ADHD informed family therapy would be the best. Sometimes coaching can be helpful. Liz, I'm trying to let my 10-year-old have body autonomy, and he's not as crazy about his meds anymore, but still needs meds to function. How do I help him feel empowered over his body, but also realize that he doesn't have the skill set yet to be 100% off of meds? I think the most important thing that we can do with kids with ADHD is to talk with them, really engage in straight talk. Like, you have some skills, you are developing others, that's true for all children, and your brain just doesn't make enough of certain chemicals that you need to really learn skills and what I say is metabolize, like hold on to them. So you learn something, but you may not forget. So we want to offer you as many options to really hold on to things. And and so we want to give him areas that he can be autonomous that are appropriate for his level of skills and development, and understand that other areas come over time. It's kind of like a driver's license. You don't get your driver's license when you're 10. You may not even get it when you're 16. It depends if you're ready to learn those tools. Julie asks, what are the side effects of medication? A 12-year-old boy, attention problems, very tired but not hyperactive. So medication can be very helpful for inattentive types of ADHD, and there are various side effects for stimulants in particular. Sometimes we can see a loss of appetite, we can see some difficulty with some sleep dysregulation, but there are also a lot of positives, an ability to focus more consistently, to be aware of oneself. I think the most important thing is you check with your prescriber about what kinds of side effects they see. Monica, you think of your brain as scattered, nonlinear thinking. ADHD informed family therapy. I've never heard of it. That's because I just made it up while I was talking to you, which is because it's what I do. I'm an ADHD trained therapist, and I do family therapy with that perspective. So it's someone who can basically do a dance between cognitive behavioral interventions and insight-oriented, developing insight-oriented awareness. Thank you, Annie. Let's see. Why do kids with ADHD or ODD are so forgetful with the littlest things within seconds of time? Well, that has to do with working memory, which isn't exactly the focus of what we're talking about today. But I will say that in order to help kids build working memory, you really want to sort of give them one direction at a time, write things down or make a visual flow chart so they can see what's coming and what they have to do. Try to do the rule of 3, which I talk about in my book, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, and in my card deck and a lot of the writing on my website, etc., which is 1, make eye contact, 2, state your direction, 3, have them repeat your direction, not once, but twice to make sure it travels down the memory lane. Lee, oldest to be off meds, but well, I'm adult and still need meds. That's great. At least you know what you need. That's part of that metacognitive awareness. Thank you, Yvonne. Heather, have you seen benefits from neurofeedback for ADHD? We had some success, but it's expensive. I've seen some benefits from neurofeedback, but that's exactly part of the challenge. It's very expensive, and the research is mixed. Yahara, both my kids have challenges, and my daughter has ADHD and anxiety. My son has a few things like anxiety and ODD and depression. We have family therapy, individual therapy, and he is a mentor, and no changes with my son. Okay, well, it sounds like things are really tough there. I don't, I can only say I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad that you're doing family therapy and he has a mentor, and sometimes changes take more days and weeks than you would like. Medication can help with kids in terms of really grasping some of the lessons they're learning and holding on to them if they can take them. Does Intuitive help with metacognition? Intuitive is a non-stimulant, and like the other non-stimulants, Intuitive can help with all aspects of ADHD and executive functioning challenges, of which, limited metacognition is one. Sarah, how do you find a professional that specializes in kids with ADHD? Well, that is really like the $9 million question. I think one thing is that a lot of people say they work with kids with ADHD, but they may not have had specific training to ADHD. You could go on the website for CHADD, CHADD. And Annie, could you put a link up for CHADD in the chat? In fact, I'm going to put a plug in because the CHADD, the International ADHD Conference, is coming up the first weekend of November. And that is a fantastic place to learn all about ADHD as an adult or a parent, as a kid. And so you may find some answers to that question there. Post-it notes help me, Susan says, keep on track for a busy day. Is that okay? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing to do. I myself have a piece of paper next to my computer, and I'm writing notes all day about things that I have to get to, so I remember them. You're welcome, Yahira. And Annie's putting up some articles on improving working memory, which is great. Dana, would you counsel long distance? I do offer some online coaching, but I'm also doing some groups. And if you are interested in me doing, like a support group, or you'd want to participate in a support group, please send me an email and tell me what you'd be interested in, and I will try to see if I can make that happen. I'm finishing 2 support groups right now with Mike Postma on helping neurodiverse middle schoolers with with anxiety, and then helping emerging adults with anxiety, and they've been really helpful and wonderful, so it's encouraging me to do some more groups. You're welcome. Thank you, Annie, for posting the attitude directory of service providers and clinicians. I didn't even think about that. My bad. Okay. Support group sounds awesome. Just send me an email. Okay. Oh, and I'm going to put here also, for those of you who are parents, I'm putting up a downloadable, which is how to avoid the homework hassle. You may want to check it out if you're an adult also, because it can help you plan how you approach your work. Yes, I do professional development for schools. Please feel free to email me. Thank you. These are all such lovely personal questions. Thank you. So let's go back to this, how we're going to teach metacognition, because it's so important. So we want to teach metacognition to kids and to ourselves by asking our open-ended questions that foster self-reflection. So we might want to use body sensations to increase self-awareness. If you have a knot in your stomach, you're doing some math, you have a knot in your stomach, what's happening? You want to reframe the kinds of self-evaluation that you're engaging in, from good and bad to something that's working or not working. We want to stay out of the judgment lane, right? And we want to, for example, we want to teach kids, how do they check their math calculations with the reverse process? Do we use check-off sheets to show the completion of assignments? Do we set individualized goals with students? If you do a piece of writing, should you be editing along the way? For older kids, no. And for adults, you want to get it out and then take a break and then edit it. One of the greatest mistakes that kids with ADHD make, and I was just talking to my daughter's friend who drove me here today, and she said one of the problems that she had with writing was that she would edit as she went along, and then she would never get things done when she was in college, until she went to the writing center and they said, no, just write and then come back and we'll edit. And I think that's really important to think about. Metacognition also helps people transfer learning and information to different contexts and tasks. And this is often challenging for people with ADHD. I get how to do, this thing in this situation. Oh, but can I transfer that to a similar situation, but maybe a different context? So metacognition helps with that. It helps you be aware of your strengths and your challenges. And again, we want to avoid the negative self-talk, the fixed mindset, and the shame that can come from from self-reflection, and instead focus on a growth mindset and resilience. I'm going to try this, I'm going to see what happens, and then, I'm going to shift, pivot, repeat, depending on what the outcome is. So the goal with teaching metacognition is to teach yourself or your kids how to observe and assess your abilities. What strategies do you need to accomplish various tasks or projects? How do you develop, find, and allocate resources to a problem or a performance or something you need to do? So let's go over some questions, and then I'll come back to some tools. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions? Let's see. Okay, I have a couple people here. Yvonne, my daughter's 11 and going through puberty, and I find her ADHD symptoms are much worse. Oh yes. Puberty definitely exacerbates ADHD symptoms, and for those of you who've gone through perimenopause or in perimenopause or a menopause, you know that going through that part of life also can disrupt your attention issues or your inattention. And that's because in the chemical soup that is our brain, hormones play a very special role. Dana, Post-its are my best friend. I'm with you. Monica, what do you do if you're an adult with horrible working memory? Monica, this is a great question. I'm going to take the horrible out and I'm going to replace it with inefficient, because I'm trying to stay away from those negative judgments, right? So when your working memory is weaker or inefficient, there are a few things you can do. One, definitely use Post-its. That can be really helpful. Maybe keep an ongoing list on your phone, on your notes on your phone. One client I have uses voice memos. He just tells himself things and then he can listen to them later. And to expect yourself to do, one thing at a time. Cooking can be very difficult for adults with ADHD because there are multi-steps and many things have to happen at the same time. So in that case, I would start with simple recipes where you really can follow it. You don't have to have 3 burners on. You're just working with one. Yes, you found out that you in your mid-daughters after your daughter was diagnosed, Yvonne. That happens a lot. A lot of people are diagnosed with ADHD after their children are diagnosed, particularly women, because women have more women than men have the internalizing forms of ADHD, inattentive. They're not acting out or calling attention to themselves in the same way in school, and so they get by until they realize that they can't. And usually that happens when kids often go to college, or they go to professional school, or they've become a flight attendant and they work and they live. And they're struggling with managing, school and life or work and life. And so that can come up for women at that time. Also, perpetual low self-esteem, rejection sensitivity, and persistent anxiety can all be symptoms of, worth checking out if they affect your attention. Susan says, writing an essay in school was always a problem for me. Back in school so long ago. ADHD. I can't certainly say that with that much information, but I can say that writing uses all 11 executive functioning skills at the same time. And so that's something that's one reason why a lot of kids really struggle with writing. If you want to contact me personally about anything, please send me an email. Yvonne, you're in Peru. A bad combo of menopause and your daughter going through puberty. She distracts me all the time. I can't stay focused. It's really hard. It's really hard. That's a hard time. And I think that Attitude is going to do a webinar. They've just done a webinar on that topic. Candace, every single thing I have to do is on my phone and calendar and alarm set. Woo! Woohoo! Bravo! Cooking, if I have to walk away, I set a reminder to come back. I have an egg timer. So I just want to point this out, Candace. Bravo to you, because you actually understand how your brain works, excellent metacognition, and you've created strategies to help compensate for some of the challenges that you already know that you have in your brain. That's the most we can ask of ourselves. We can't ask for perfection, but if we know what our challenges are and we can work with them, that's great. I myself struggle with time management. So I use backwards design religiously. I also set alerts and alarms on my phone, including when I want to go upstairs at night, because otherwise I'll watch a show and then I'll watch the next episode, and before I know it, it's 11 o'clock and I have to go to work the next day. That's not enough sleep for me. Dana says, texting is better for me, talking on the phone, because I can erase what I say if I don't like it. That's a great compensatory skill, and it's good to know that about yourself. Emmy Lou, I asked my child, what do you need to be ready for school? The routine never changes, but to get out the door is hard. I don't constantly scaffold. Any tips? Yes. So if your child knows what to do, I would ask your child to make a list themselves. And if they can't make a list, then can you make a collage of the things they need to do? Or can you take a picture of them all ready for school with their, lunchbox and their backpack and their jacket and put it up on the refrigerator? One of my clients did that, and her child would be like sort of drifting around, not paying attention. And she would say to her daughter, do you look like your picture? Because we can't leave till you look like your picture. Sometimes there's a device called a watch minder that can help kids with little alarms along the way. Monica, about cooking, I find sheet pan and crock pot dinners are your friend. Yes, I love that. So long as all the ingredients have the same cooking time. Again, that is a beautiful adaptability. I didn't say that sentence right, sorry. You have beautifully adapted by knowing that that's what helps you cook. Inattentive, where do you find a book or information about that type of ADHD? There's lots of resources about women with ADHD on attitude, and they have a number of webinars in their library. I would certainly recommend Sari Solden, Patricia Quinn, Linda Rogley. These are all women who have written books about, and Terry Matlin, about living with ADHD. I highly recommend all of them. Thanks, Annie. There's a free webinar on menopause and ADHD. Planner pad helps me. I have to write everything down. Yeah, so I have clients who have little notebooks. They come in and they write things down. They write things from our sessions. They write what they have to do. That's how they remember. The key is this metacognition, knowing what you need that would help you. And the only way you're going to figure that out is through trial and error, not criticism and error. Okay, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to try something. It may work. That's great. Then it's trial and success. Or you may try something and it may not work, and then you're going to try something else. So we try, we stumble, we try again. You call it a crutch, I call it a ladder. I love that expression. I actually don't use the word crutch, but thank you. It is a ladder. It is always a ladder. Yes. Alarm, 10 types, and your Google Calendar. Yep, thank you, Lee. I'm having a little, there we go. Light to wake up, and a light. That's great. You're welcome, Emmylou. Janice, our 10-year-old son got a daily routine task list on his phone. Oh, those apps are great. It really helps him, and he even sets alarms on it. Importantly, he's happy with it. Janice, would you post what that app is? That would be really helpful. Thank you. Candace, me too. My daughter is 14. I'll be 60 next month, both with ADHD, and it can be a struggle. It's so easy to lose focus. Yes. Okay, these are such great comments. Thank you for those books, Annie. Okay, so let's go into some tools. What are some tools to foster metacognition? So first we want to ask, when we're faced with a task, I need to, I don't know, I'm thinking of something, I'm not coming up with much. It's the end of the day on Friday. I need to do a project for work on women with inattentive ADHD. What do I know about that could assist me here? So I don't actually know anything about that topic, but what do I know about researching? And what I know about researching is I can go online. I could go to the library. Most people would go online. And there are articles, there are books, there are videos. I can go onto YouTube. So you think about, what do I know about this subject that could help me here? What do I know about learning about this subject that could help me here? Then you want to ask yourself, where do I need help? Like, where is it that I could actually use some assistance? Do I know what kind of help that is? Okay. Then you want to ask yourself, what is my first step? What is my second step? Do I have a list? Can I make a list of what I need to do? And then you want to identify any confusion that you have or any possible obstacles. And so all of this is using your metacognitive ability, your ability to evaluate yourself and evaluate a task at hand. So what we want to do, what I want you to come out of today's Facebook Live with, is that you can acknowledge that you have difficulties without succumbing to a narrative that I am bad, I am stupid, I am lazy. You fill in the negative blank, okay? Everybody has challenges, so you can acknowledge your challenges without succumbing to the difficulties that you're facing and giving up. You can also focus on how I am learning more than what it is that I need to be doing. So that's part of the metacognitive process. You need to know the what, but in order to generate a routine to build a skill, we have to understand the how. So let's see. I have a few things here. Okay. Sarah, I'm not in menopause yet, but I'm in my mid 40s, and the symptoms are far worse than earlier in my life. Parenting an ADHD teen has been difficult. Yes, you got to buckle up. It's a roller coaster of a ride. It is challenging. Brilly is a good app too. They have a kid and adult version. Thank you, Yvonne. Yahara, my child doesn't do well with sticky notes and notes around the house because to him, it's pointless because he doesn't pay attention to it. So, so for him, there's not a recognition that they're there, and it doesn't really matter. It's invisible to him. So how can I get him to do his daily task without me doing it all the time? For me, those tools work perfectly. I write everything down and set alarms. So what I would suggest, Yahara, is that you have a centralized area for tasks and chores that have to be done, in the public, tasks and chores that have to be done in his bedroom, and I would work with him on creating it. Maybe he wants to color it, maybe he wants to put some stickers on, whatever would make sense, and then you continue to refer him to that one location. I think having them in different places might be confusing to him. Auto pay option for bill paying. Sarah, yes. Actually, it came through. It was sort of like autopsy, so I was confused. Okay, Yvonne, I love this discussion. So glad, Yvonne. Lee, we're here to help you. We know you need help, but the help, oh, sorry, wait, something is happening. Okay, but the help, this is the help square, this is the help square, and what I see doesn't fit in the square. I see. Okay, I think, Lee, what you're saying is, like, you can ask someone to help you, and you know you need help, but then the help they give you is in this box, and it's not the box that you need something else. So one of the benefits of understanding what learner you are, and you know you need help, is if you can name it. You can name and normalize it. I need help in this area. I'm not sure specifically what would help, but I know what I'm doing isn't working. That would really be a great way to start. Candace, changing the recordings in our head. Oh, yeah. With my dyslexia, notes didn't work well when I was young. Yes, so that's what I mean. So sometimes notes are not helpful, but images are. And so we want to think about, or a flow chart, or something that's actually fun and is a little bit more creative than just a written list. Alicia, my visual, sorry, hold on. Alicia, visual schedule works well for my son. And I made it nice and big on a poster board and printed the pictures of each action and put them on a poster. I made it interactive, but I also put the rewards on it. That sounds great. Just the task list and reminder in the phone. Okay. It's hard because he's 15, but thank you so much. I'll try it. Okay, great. Christopher, good morning from sunny Vancouver, British Columbia. Good morning, or good afternoon. I think you said good afternoon. Sorry. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now in the chat is I'd like you to think about yourself or your child, and think about an area where you struggle, and what would it help? What kind of, I would like to hear, an area where you struggle and what kind of scaffolding has helped you before, but it's hard for you to create. So what's an area where you struggle, and what kind of scaffolding can be helpful for you, but it's hard to create? Any ideas? I know that for me, sometimes if I'm in a talk and someone's, saying all kinds of really cool things, that I might not grasp them all. So I might need to either, if I can't write them down, I'll sort of think, okay, this is point. I do use my fingers. I'm like, this is point 1, this is point 2, this is point 3. So when we're thinking about metacognition, what are some areas where people struggle, and let's try to brainstorm some scaffolding for the areas where you are struggling. Monica says, my son, 19, with autism, I'm a single mom, it's a lot. This has been my Bible, definemyday.com. It's a notebook that helps me put down my day in writing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sarah, I love lists. However, I tend to forget them when I need them at the grocery store or shopping. That's why I want to put things on this phone, because you're not going to forget them. Candace, cleaning my room. The rest of the house is good, but I cannot get to the bedroom. So when you have a place that is really hard for you to do, start small. Maybe, pick up the socks from your floor. Maybe, decide what's clean and what's clean, and what can be folded, and you put that in a pile, and what needs to be washed, and you can put that in another pile. When the bedroom is messy, or any room is messy, it's overwhelming, and so we always want to break things down into small and smaller chunks so we can get started. Monica says, getting started when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Right. So that's a great thing to share, because a lot of people have that. And when we want to build a task initiation skills, what we want to do is what I just said, which is break things down into small pieces. If you can't get started, it's still too big. You also might want to decide, which is an easy task that I could kind of get done, so I'll feel like I'm making progress, and then maybe I can go to something that's a little more challenging. Or maybe you just need to do some easy tasks for several days in your bedroom, for example, and feel like you go, after 5 days, oh, there's my floor. I wondered where it was. Alicia, I struggle with not getting mad. I have to take a time out and remember that it's not their fault, but I can't help getting mad after a while. I have 2 children that are ADHD and ODD. Of course you struggle with getting mad. Who wouldn't? Raising kids can be very aggravating. And so it's wonderful that you actually have the insight, the metacognition to say, whoa, I need a time out. I need a time apart, and I'm going to go do X so I can regroup and then come back. That's such important. That's the first of my 5 C's, self-control. And that really does involve not just awareness that you're feeling upset, but the self-regulation and the emotional control to say, whoa, I need to make a different choice right now. Thank you. Don't put it down, put it away. Used to help. Now I'm overwhelmed. Right. So, you might be able to put one thing away at a time. When there's a big pile of laundry or mail or books or, dirty dishes, it's hard to get through them. Even if there's a big pile of clean dishes, we're putting them away. It just seems unpleasant. So you might want to start with a smaller piece of that, like, I'm just going to do the silverware. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll do more. Or I'm just going to do the silverware now, and then 3 hours from now, I'll do the plates. And then before bed, I'll do the glasses and the cups. Really break things down. It will help you. It will help you feel more motivated and successful. Liz, yes, and this is a major stressor for me. Makes me feel defeated. Nice to know I'm not alone. Susan, long-term projects and creating work-back schedules or milestone timelines. Okay, so long-term projects with schedules and timelines are difficult for many people, and particularly people with ADHD. And so that might be something that you want to work on with a coach, or if you have a colleague or your supervisor to help you work backwards. So you know something is due here, and these are the components of the project that you have to do. When does each component need to be turned in? And that might help you more if your supervisor could say, I need this piece at this time, and then this piece at this other time. You might be able to plan and execute more efficiently. Yvonne, at work, I'm in a coordinator role in a diabetes clinic, and I'm pulled in many directions. Dealing with crises, I find it hard to get projects completed, lots of competing priorities. I'm starting to think this is not the right job for me. It may or may not be. You might want to take a look at some recent Facebook Lives we did on planning and prioritizing. That could help you. Keep things pick up. At the end of the day, my brain is fried from keeping on tasks, too many things, things that work for me. Other just do it why they do, and then what didn't work for me. Thank you. Peter, I've been trying to put away stuff for weeks in my room. It feels like a task that'll never be completed. I feel like a cluttered mind equals a cluttered room. I think that there is some psychological theories that, are in, how our internal space is reflected in our external space, that may or may not apply to you. But I do think that, if you're trying to put away things in your room for weeks and it feels like a task, maybe consider having a body double, a friend or a relative or a cousin who can be on the phone with you, or maybe can be in your room with you, and say, okay, let's just work on this little square of space, and let's clean this little square of space, so you feel like, whoa, look at that. I am actually making progress. Candace, thanks goodness. Defeated is exactly how it feels, and that makes it even harder. Amen. I always struggle to get out of my hyperfocus when I do the work I love, academic research. Even if I set an alarm that I purposely put into a room that makes me get up to set it off, I go back to work and continue working, hear the alarm again, get up, set it off, go back to work, and so on. I just can't stand the feeling of leaving a task without finishing it. I'm afraid that it will take too much energy taking it up again another time. Besides, I can't get that fascinating topic out of my head. It's like an addiction. And I know exactly when the alarm rings, I should stop working, but I can't resist. So this is actually, Romo, thank you for sharing. This is a kind of perfectionist mentality that you have. It's like, I have to keep going. I have to keep going. It's almost a perseverative, a sort of obsessive thing. Like, until it's done, I can't check it off. And this is actually, I'm sure it sounds like it's very difficult for you, because you could be hyper-focusing for a long time, and not everything gets finished exactly when you want it to. So if you can break down your work into some goals, into some chunks, and you can finish the chunk, even if the whole piece isn't finished, you'll see that you're on your way. Monica, I often play meditation music in the background while going about my day to keep calm. I love that idea. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, thank you, Yvonne. And thank you, my daughter and I will body double together. That's a great idea. Okay, so I have a couple minutes for a few more comments. Again, I want to encourage you to really think about what do you know about a particular topic or situation that you already understand and have the resources for? What do you think might assist you in researching or activating support for that issue? Where do you need help? What's your first step and your second step? And identify potential obstacles and brainstorm either, by yourself or with someone else, what your choices would be. Acknowledge some of the difficulties you're having without succumbing to a failure mentality and giving up. Focus on how you're learning as much as on what you are learning. Remember that metacognition helps you transfer learning and information from one context to another. And this is often challenging for people with ADHD who have difficulty naturally with shifting and flexibility. Let me see if there's any more questions or comments, and then we'll probably stop. Let's see. Okay. Yes, I have a few more. Peter, is it typical to hyperfocus on specific topics with ADHD? Yes, it is. And a lot of people with ADHD like to get into hyperfocus because they feel that's where they're productive. However, I think that what happens when you hyperfocus is that you like with any application of your brain energy, you use up the glucose centers in the brain, which is the fuel. And so then your brain gets tired, and what kicks in is adrenaline or cortisol. And so then you're really kind of running on fumes. So it's really helpful if you can give yourself, like, I'm going to really focus for 2 hours, and then at 2 hours I'm going to really set 3 alarms and get outside, walk around the block, have lunch. I struggle with that myself. I just want to keep going. There's so much to do. And when I do that, I'm much more depleted at the end of the day than if I actually took that half hour to sit down, read the paper, and walk around the park. So there's a question about strategies to help kids stay focused on school. Thank you, Connie, for that question. We will come back to that another time. Thank you so much for your participation. Again, here is your handout, which is about helping kids avoid the homework hassle, and you might find it useful in terms of helping you avoid procrastination with your work projects. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye.